Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Sharingan god, a demigod with a divine Kekkei Genkai, Naruto x Thalia Grace Percy Jackson. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Divine Vision Awakened. The forest blurred around Naruto as he leapt from branch to branch, his movements fluid and purposeful. 17 years of life as a shinobi had honed his body into a weapon, muscles coiled with lethal potential beneath the black and orange garments that had become his signature. The familiar weight of his kunai pouch tapped rhythmically against his GH as he moved deeper into uncharted territory. Surveillance mission, he muttered to himself, voice barely audible above the whisper of leaves. Just reconnaissance. So why does it feel like something's watching me instead? 3 days beyond Konoha's borders, following rumors of strange energy manifestations that had civilian villages in an uproar. Tsunade had been specific. Observe, document, return. No heroics. No engagement. A simple assignment for a shinobi of his caliber, almost insultingly so. The headache began without warning, a needling sensation behind his eyes that rapidly escalated into white-hot pain. Naruto stumbled, missing his footing on the next branch and plummeting toward the forest floor. Years of training kicked in, he twisted midair, channeling chakra to cushion his landing. His knees hit the soft earth with a muffled thud. What the hell? He pressed the heels of his hands against his eye sockets as the forest seemed to warp around him. The pain intensified, drawing a ragged gasp from his throat. Through streaming eyes, Naruto caught his reflection in a nearby puddle, and what he saw froze the breath in his lungs. The familiar cobalt blue of his irises had vanished, replaced by crimson. But this was no ordinary Sharingan, not the three-tomo pattern he'd witnessed countless times in Sasuke's eyes. These were interlocking geometric patterns that FTED and realigned with each throb of pain, golden threads weaving through the red in configurations that seemed to defy the physical limitations of an iris. Impossible, he whispered, transfixed by the alien gaze staring back at him from the water's surface. I'm not an Uchiha. The forest dimmed around him, sounds becoming muffled as if he were underwater. His enhanced vision captured everything with crystalline clarity. The microscopic structures of leaves, the ultraviolet patterns on butterfly wings invisible to normal sight, the slow-motion trajectory of a falling dewdrop. Then his perception expanded beyond the physical. He began to see connections. Threads of energy linking everything in the forest, patterns reminiscent of sealing jutsu but infinitely more complex, stretching NTO dimensions his mind struggled to comprehend. One pattern dominated all others, a massive, pulsing distortion in the fabric of reality approximately 50 meters ahead. Unlike anything he'd ever encountered. It resembled a fissure in space itself, bleeding energy that seemed neither chakra nor natural. It called to him, resonating with something deep in his blood. Naruto rose unsteadily to his feet. The rational part of his mind screamed to retreat, to report this anomaly to Tsunade immediately. But something more primal, more instinctual, drew him forward. Each step toward the distortion intensified the connection. His new vision revealing more details. Ancient symbols etched into reality itself, patterns that felt achingly familiar though he'd never seen them before. This is what I was sent to find, he realized. But I don't think even Tsunade Bachan knew what it really was. As he approached the distortion, the air grew heavy, charged with potential like the moment before lightning strikes. His skin prickled with electricity, hairs standing on end. The fissure expanded, responding to his proximity. Tendrils of energy reaching toward him with deliberate purpose. Naruto halted, summoning a shadow clone with a practiced hand sign. Go back to Konoha, he instructed his duplicate. Tell Tsunade Bachan I found something big. If I don't return in 3 days. The clone nodded grimly. I know. Good luck, boss. As the clone bounded away, Naruto turned back to the distortion. The rational choice would be to wait for backup, to approach this unknown phenomenon with caution. But throughout his life, Naruto Uzumaki had rarely made the rational choice when instinct guided him elsewhere. Besides, whatever this was, it was changing, growing unstable. Old see it in the increasingly erratic patterns, feel it in the mounting pressure against his skin. Nothing ventured, he murmured with a grim smile, adjusting his headband. His evolved eyes traced the patterns within the fissure, somehow understanding their flow and meaning. With deliberate precision, he channeled his chakra to match the energy signature of the distortion. The effect was immediate and violent. The fissure expanded explosively, engulfing him in light so intense it rendered even his enhanced vision momentarily useless. Naruto felt himself being pulled forward, his body simultaneously compressed and stretched in ways that should have been physically impossible. A soundless scream tore from his throat as reality itself seemed to fold around him. Then, nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came sound, unfamiliar birdsong, distant shouting, and a rhythmic crashing he couldn't identify. Then sensation. Soft grass beneath him, warm sunlight on his face, air that tasted different, charged with unfamiliar energy. Finally, sight returned as his eyelids fluttered open, revealing a pristine blue sky unmarked by the canopy of leaves he'd expected. Not in the forest anymore, Naruto groaned, pushing himself upright. His head throbbed dully, but the excruciating pain had subsided. A quick assessment confirmed all limbs intact, equipment present, and chakra levels, while diminished, still substantial. The landscape around him was unlike anything in Fire Country. Rolling hills stretched toward a sparkling coastline where that rhythmic crashing sound, waves, he realized, originated. Nearby stood a cluster of strange buildings in architectural styles he'd never encountered, some resembling ancient temples, others more modern structures. The air smelled of strawberries and sea salt. "Where the hell am I?" he muttered, rising to his feet. His enhanced vision remained, the world around him rendered in supernatural clarity. He could see energy patterns here too, but different, less like chakra networks and more like something else. Something ancient and powerful that resonated with his blood in ways he couldn't explain. A scream shattered his contemplation, high-pitched, desperate, and unmistakably human. Naruto's body responded before conscious thought, muscles launching him toward the source. He cleared the hillcrest in seconds, chakra enhancing his already formidable speed. The scene below stopped him cold. A girl approximately his age fought for her life against. Naruto blinked, certain his eyes were deceiving him despite their newfound power. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, with the muscular torso of a man but the head of a bull. Massive fists clutched a double-bladed axe that whistled through the air with each swing, barely missing the girl as she ducked and weaved with practiced agility. Her short black hair whipped around her face as she rolled beneath another devastating strike, coming up with a spear that crackled with electricity. "Come on, beef brain," she taunted, voice strong despite her obvious fatigue. "Is that the best you've got?" The bull man, Minotaur, supplied some distant memory from academy lessons about mythological creatures, roared in response, charging with surprising speed. The girl sidestepped, but her movement was a fraction too slow. The creature's shoulder caught her midsection, sending her flying. Her back hit a pine tree with sickening force, the spear falling from limp fingers. Naruto moved without hesitation. His hands formed familiar seals as he bounded down the hillside. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A dozen shadow clones materialized around him, orange and black blurs converging on the Minotaur from multiple angles. The creature hesitated, momentarily confused by the sudden multiplication of targets. That moment was all Naruto needed. "Hey, cow face," he shouted in perfect English, though he'd never spoken the language before. "Pick on someone your own size." The Minotaur whirled toward his voice, nostrils flaring. Behind it, the girl stirred, pushing herself upright with visible effort. Her electric blue eyes widened at the sight of his clones. "What the?" she began. But her voice cut off as the Minotaur charged Naruto. The original Naruto leapt straight up, somersaulting over the creature's head while his clones engaged from the sides. Years of combat experience had taught him to assess opponents instantly. This creature was physically powerful but relatively slow and seemingly unintelligent. A straightforward taijutsu approach would work best. Landing behind the Minotaur, Naruto called up his wind nature chakra, concentrating it around his hand. Not a full Rasengan, too destructive for an unknown environment, but enough focused wind chakra to penetrate the creature's thick hide. His clones coordinated beautifully, two grabbing the Minotaur's massive arms while others pummeled its torso with synchronized strikes. The creature bellowed in rage, muscles straining against the clone's grip. You might want to cover your ears, Naruto called to the girl, who had retrieved her spear and was watching the battle with astonished eyes. Before she could respond, Naruto struck. Palm thrust forward, he drove concentrated wind chakra into the Minotaur's back with pinpoint precision. The effect was instantaneous, a focused explosion of air pressure that blasted through the creature's body. The Minotaur froze mid-bellow, then collapsed to its knees. Instead of bleeding, its massive form began disintegrating into golden dust that scattered on the breeze. Naruto dismissed his clones with a casual gesture, turning toward the girl. You okay? She stared at him, spear still crackling with electricity in her white-knuckled grip. Her leather jacket was torn at the shoulder, revealing a nasty scrape beneath. Despite her injuries, she maintained a fighting stance, wary eyes assessing him from head to toe. Who are you? She demanded. What are you? Those weren't illusions, they were solid duplicates. And your eyes? Naruto blinked, suddenly remembering his transformed appearance. My name's Naruto Uzumaki. As for what I am, he shrugged. Honestly, I was hoping someone here might help me figure that out. Where exactly is here, anyway? The girl's posture relaxed slightly, though suspicion still radiated from her. Camp Half-Blood, Long Island, New York. She studied his blank expression. United States. Earth. Ring any bells? Earth. Sure, Naruto replied, bewildered. Never heard of the other places. Is this some other continent? A fresh wave of pain lanced through his eyes, drawing a hiss from between clenched teeth. The world around him rippled, patterns shifting and realigning. For a brief, disorienting moment, he saw through the dimensional barriers separating this reality from his own. Saw Konoha shimmering like a mirage, impossibly distant yet connected to this place by threads of golden energy. Hey, are you all right? The girl's voice had shed some of its hostility, concern replacing suspicion as she stepped closer. You look like you're about to pass out. I'm fine, Naruto managed, straightening with effort. Just adjusting. Right. She sounded unconvinced. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, I'm Thalia Grace, daughter of Zeus. And I think we need to get you to Chiron immediately. Those eyes of yours, they're not like anything I've seen, and I've seen a lot of weird. Zeus. The name triggered another wave of recognition, connected to lessons about ancient religions. Like, the god of thunder. Thalia's eyebrows rose. You know Greek mythology but not the United States. Where are you from exactly? Konohagakure, Naruto answered automatically. Hidden Leaf Village, in Fire Country. But I'm starting to think it's a lot further away than I realized. A distant shout drew their attention. Several figures were racing toward them from the direction of the buildings, armed with various weapons. More friends of yours? Naruto asked, tensing slightly. Back up, I don't need any more, thanks to you. Thalia's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Word of advice. Those eyes of yours are going to raise questions. Big ones. If I were you, I'd consider whether you want to answer them all immediately. Naruto nodded, understanding her meaning. With concentration, he channeled chakra differently, feeling his eyes shift back to their natural blue. The world dimmed slightly, returning to normal clarity rather than the hyper-real vision he'd experienced with his transformed eyes. Better? He asked. Thalia nodded, looking slightly relieved, less likely to cause a panic. Come on, Whiskers. You just saved my life. Least I can do is make sure no one skewers you before you get to explain yourself. As they walked toward the approaching group, Naruto felt a curious warmth that had nothing to do with dimensional travel or mysterious eye transformations. Despite the circumstances, or perhaps because of them, he sensed the beginning of a connection with this fierce, blue-eyed warrior. Something in her combative grace and unflinching courage resonated with his own spirit. So, he ventured, daughter of Zeus. Does that make you, what, a demigoddess? Took you less time to figure that out than most, Thalia replied with an appraising glance. Yes, half god, half mortal. All attitude, according to my friends. What about you? Those duplicates, that wind attack, that wasn't any kind of godly power I recognize. Where I come from, we call it chakra, Naruto explained. Life energy that can be shaped and controlled. The duplicates are shadow clones, solid copies that can think and act independently. Useful trick, she commented. Any chance you could teach it? Naruto laughed. It takes years of training to build up enough chakra for even one shadow clone. I'm unusual, aren't we all? Thalia muttered, but her eyes sparkled with genuine interest. Well, Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf Village, welcome to the world of Greek mythology come to life. Try not to get killed while you're here, the paperwork's a nightmare. Camp Half-Blood defied every expectation Naruto had formed. The collection of buildings he'd spotted from the hillside turned out to be an eclectic assortment of cabins arranged in a U shape, each distinctively designed to represent, as he quickly learned, different Greek gods. Beyond them stood an open-air pavilion, an amphitheater, combat arenas, climbing walls that poured actual lava, and strawberry fields that stretched toward the distant Long Island Sound. Most surprising were the inhabitants. Teenagers and young adults who moved with the awareness and grace of trained warriors, carrying weapons openly and demons trotting abilities that rivaled ninja techniques. Satyrs with human torsos and goat legs trotted between buildings. Nymphs materialized from trees and water features. Even the air felt charged with UNF. A familiar power that made Naruto's skin tingle. Chiron proved to be the most startling sight of all. A middle-aged man from the waist up, a majestic white stallion from the waist down. He stood on the P-orc of a 4-story farmhouse, the big house, Thalia called it, observing their approach with ancient eyes that seemed to look through Naruto rather than at him. Thalia, the centaur greeted, his voice deep and cultured. I see your perimeter patrol encountered some excitement. Just a rogue minotaur, she replied with studied casualness. Nothing special, except that. She glanced at Naruto. This guy saved my hide. Literally appeared out of nowhere and took down the Minotaur with techniques I've never seen before. Chiron's penetrating gaze shifted fully to Naruto. Indeed, and you are, young man. Naruto Uzumaki, he answered, meeting the centaur's eyes steadily. Shinobi of Konohagakure, a term I'm not familiar with, Chiron mused. Nor is your energy signature like any thing I've encountered in my 3,000 years. His tail flicked thoughtfully. Would you mind demonstrating these techniques Thalia mentioned? Somewhere less populated, perhaps. The training arena they relocated to was a circular space ringed with tiered seating, reminiscent of the Chunin exam arena in Konoha but smaller. A dozen campers followed at a discreet distance, curiosity overcoming whatever tasks they'd been assigned. Naruto noted their movements. These weren't ordinary teenagers but trained fighters, assessing him as carefully as he assessed them. So, Chiron said once they reached the center of the arena. Thalia mentioned duplicates. Naruto nodded, forming the cross-shaped hand seal that had become second nature. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Chakra surged through his network, splitting and manifesting as 5 perfect copies of himself. Each clone possessed independent consciousness, capable of separate actions and thought processes. They spread out in a loose semicircle, identical grins on their faces. The watching campers gasped. One boy with dark hair and sea-green eyes whistled appreciatively. Now that's a neat trick. Any chance they can help with cabin inspection? They're not illusions, Thalia explained, poking one clone in the chest. Completely solid duplicates. They helped me fight the Minotaur. Fascinating, Chiron murmured, circling the clones with scholarly interest. Not godly magic, yet clearly supernatural. Young man, you channel this power, this chakra, through hand gestures. Hand seals, Naruto corrected, dismissing his clones with a casual wave. They help shape and direct chakra for different techniques. Every person has chakra, but shinobi train from childhood to expand our reserves and control. Every person in your world, perhaps, Chiron said shrewdly. Here, I suspect you'll find things quite different. The observation confirmed what Naruto had already begun to suspect. He hadn't simply traveled to another continent but to another dimension entirely. The revelation should have terrified him, yet instead he felt a strange calm. His entire life had prepared him for adapting to impossible situations. There's more, Thalia said, fixing Naruto with an expectant look. Show him the eyes. A murmur rippled through the gathered campers. Naruto hesitated, remembering Thalia's earlier warning about causing panic. But Chiron's expression held no fear, only academic curiosity tinged with something deeper, recognition, perhaps. With deliberate concentration, Naruto channeled chakra to his eyes, feeling the transformation take hold. The world sharpened instantly, details jumping into focus with preternatural clarity. Energy patterns became visible, flowing through the campers in golden streams rather than the blue-green chakra networks he was accustomed to seeing in Konoha. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Campers drew weapons reflexively, backing away. Even Thalia, who'd seen them before, inhaled sharply. But it was Chiron's response that proved most telling. The ancient centaur's face paled, his tail freezing mid-swish as he stared into Naruto's transformed eyes. Impossible, he breathed, the single word carrying centuries of astonishment. You recognize them, Naruto said. Not a question. The recognition in Chiron's expression was unmistakable. Not exactly, the centaur replied carefully. But certain elements. The pattern is reminiscent of symbols from the First Age, before even the Titans. When the primordial gods still walked the earth. He approached slowly, bending to examine Naruto's eyes more closely. The geometric base pattern resembles what mortals now call the flower of life, a sacred pattern said to contain all mathematical and linguistic information in the universe. But these golden threads interwoven through it, they bear a striking resemblance to Mnemosyne's script. Who? Naruto asked, the unfamiliar name awkward on his tongue. Mnemosyne, Titaness of memory and remembrance, mother of the 9 muses, supplied a new voice. A blonde girl with intense gray eyes pushed forward from the crowd. Her script was said to be able to record reality itself, to capture memories in written form that could be experienced rather than simply read. Thank you, Annabeth, Chiron said with a nod. His expression remained troubled as he addressed Naruto again. Young man, those eyes of yours, they're not a natural feature of your people, are they? No, Naruto admitted. Where I come from, these eyes, or something similar, belong to a clan called the Uchiha. They're called Sharingan, but mine are different. I shouldn't have them at all. They just manifested today, right before I was pulled through some kind of dimensional rift. Chiron exchanged meaningful glances with Annabeth. A dimensional rift, you say? And when exactly did this occur? Few hours ago, maybe. Time gets fuzzy when you're being folded through reality. Naruto attempted a light tone. But the gravity of their expressions dampened his effort. 3 hours and 17 minutes ago, Annabeth said with certainty, we recorded a massive energy spike at the camp boundary. Unlike anything our sensors have detected before. It registered simultaneously on both mortal and divine instrumentation. Which should be impossible, added a lanky boy fiddling with what looked like a bronze tablet. Divine and mortal technologies operate on completely different principles. Nothing registers on both simultaneously. Nothing from this world, Chiron corrected quietly. He straightened to his full height, towering over the gathered demigods. I believe we need to continue this discussion more privately. Annabeth, Percy, Thalia, join us in the big house. The rest of you, return to your activities. Disappointed murmurs met this dismissal, but the campers dispersed with respectful nods to Chiron. Naruto caught fragments of their whispered conversations. Those eyes, never seen anything like it. Not even a demigod, before they moved beyond even his enhanced hearing. As they walked toward the farmhouse, Naruto fell into step beside Thalia. The pain in his eyes had subsided to a dull throb. Manageable but persistent. More concerning was the sensation of power building within them, as if they were still evolving, adapting to this new reality. You doing okay? Thalia asked quietly. You look like someone who's had the world pulled out from under them. That's pretty accurate, Naruto admitted with a rueful smile. Yesterday I was just a shinobi on a routine mission. Today I'm in another dimension with centaurs and demigods, sporting eyes that apparently connect to your primordial gods. It's a lot to process. Yeah, well, welcome to my world. One day you're a normal kid. The next you're fighting monsters and learning your dad is king of the gods. Her tone was light, but something in her eyes spoke of old pain. You adapt, you survive, eventually it becomes your new normal. The casual resilience in her voice struck a chord with Naruto. How many times had his own world shifted beneath him? Learning about the 9 tales sealed within him, discovering his heritage, losing mentors. Gaining new powers. Each revelation had changed him, yet his core identity remained. I'm good at adapting, he replied with genuine confidence. And surviving is kind of my specialty. Thalia's mouth quirked in that half-smile he was beginning to appreciate. Yeah, I got that impression when you took down a minotaur like it was a training exercise. Speaking of which, that wind technique. What exactly was that? Wind release, Naruto explained. I have an affinity for wind nature chakra. Different shinobi have different elemental affinities: fire, water, earth, lightning, wind. Lightning. Huh. Thalia's eyes lit up with interest. That's my thing. Child of Zeus and all. She held up her hand, and tiny arcs of electricity danced between her fingertips. I can call down lightning in battle, generate electric charges, sense electrical fields. That's amazing, Naruto said with genuine appreciation. In my world, lightning techniques are considered among the most difficult to master. My sensei, Kakashi, uses lightning as his primary element. Your world sounds fascinating, she said, then hesitated. Do you think you'll find a way back? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to address. Before Naruto could formulate a response, they arrived at the big house, where Chiron ushered them in. A room dominated by a ping-pong table covered in maps and scrolls. Our informal council room, he explained, noticing Naruto's bemused expression. Please, make yourself comfortable. We have much to discuss. The briefing lasted hours, information flowing in both directions. Naruto outlined the basics of the shinobi world, the hidden villages, the elemental nations, chakra theory, and the different types of jutsu. He explained the normal Sharingan abilities of the Uchiha clan: photographic memory, predictive combat awareness, genjutsu projection, while carefully omitting more dangerous details like Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. In turn, Chiron and the demigods provided a crash course in Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus, their demigod children, monsters, prophecies, and the complex hierarchy of divine politics. Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, shared stories of recent conflicts with the titans and giants that left Naruto's head spinning with the scale and scope of their battles. So these gods, they're still active? Naruto asked, struggling to reconcile the concept with his own world's more distant divine figures. They have children with mortals, intervene in conflicts, grant powers. Active but restricted, Annabeth explained. Ancient laws limit their direct interference in mortal affairs. They operate through proxies, primarily their children, as demigods. Which explains why they need camp. Percy added with a hint of bitterness. A place to dump their kids and train them to fight their battles. Percy, Chiron admonished gently. What? It's true. The son of Poseidon shrugged unapologetically. Don't get me wrong, I love camp, and some gods are better than others. But let's not pretend most of them are winning Parent of the Year awards. Thalia snorted in agreement. Understatement of the century. The conversation shifted to Naruto's mysterious appearance and the nature of his evolved Sharingan. Annabeth, daughter of Athena and clearly the strategist of the group, peppered him with increasingly technical questions about dimensional theory and the properties of chakra. The timing can't be coincidence, she concluded after examining a chart of energy readings. The dimensional disturbance you experienced coincided exactly with unusual astronomical alignments we've been tracking. Something is affecting the barriers between realities. Quote, and somehow it's specifically connected to you, Chiron added, studying Naruto with those ancient eyes. Or more precisely, to those eyes of yours. The Sharingan, you called them. Naruto nodded, fighting another wave of dizziness as the patterns in his vision shifted again. The transforming eyes seemed to be stabilizing into a permanent configuration, the pain gradually subsiding as they settled into their new form. I shouldn't have them at all, he repeated. In my world, the Sharingan is a bloodline limit, a genetic ability passed down through the Uchiha clan. I'm not an Uchiha, perhaps not by name, Chiron mused. But bloodlines can be complex things, especially when divine heritage is involved. You mentioned your parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. What do you know of their lineages? Not much, Naruto admitted. My father was known as the Yellow Flash, a prodigy with space-time ninjutsu. My mother came from the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure, the village hidden in the whirlpools. They were known for their vitality, longevity, and sealing techniques. Whirlpools, Annabeth repeated thoughtfully. Interesting symbolism. In many cultures, whirlpools represent transitions between worlds, pathways to other dimensions. And eyes, added Thalia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, are often symbolic gateways to the soul or other realities. Chiron nodded approvingly. Precisely. What if your Uchiha clan's Sharingan and your mother's Uzumaki heritage both derive from some ancient connection to forces similar to our primordial gods? Forces that transcend dimensional boundaries. The theory wasn't as far-fetched as it might have seemed hours ago. Naruto had encountered enough impossible things in his life to recognize the ring of truth in Chiron's words. Something about this place, these people, resonated with a part of him he'd never fully understood, a connection deeper than his link to the Nine Tails, older than his parents' legacies. So what happens now? He asked finally, looking around at these strange new allies. I'm stuck in your dimension with no clear way home, sporting eyes that apparently connect to your primordial gods, and no idea why I was brought here. Now, Chiron said with gentle authority, you rest. It's nearly sunset, and dimensional travel takes a toll even on the sturdiest constitution. Tomorrow we can begin OPER testing of your abilities and research potential methods of return, if that's what you desire. The subtle qualification wasn't lost on Naruto. If that's what you desire. As if he might choose to stay in this strange new world. The thought should have been absurd. Konoha was his home, his friends and precious people were there, his dream of becoming Hokage. Yet something about this place D to him on a level he couldn't articulate. Where will he stay? Percy asked practically. He's not exactly a regular camper. No determined godly parent. The big house has guest quarters, Chiron began, but Thalia interrupted. He can stay in Zeus's cabin, she said with sudden decisiveness. There's plenty of room since it's just me, and if anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with me. The offer surprised everyone, Naruto included. From what he'd gathered, the cabins were sacred spaces dedicated to specific gods, housing only their children. For Thalia to offer space in Zeus's cabin, particularly given her father's status as king of the gods, was significant. Chiron recovered first. That's unusually generous of you, Thalia. Are you certain your father would approve? Dad's big on hospitality when it suits him, she replied with a shrug that didn't quite achieve the casualness she was aiming for. Besides, Naruto saved my life today. Least I can do is make sure he has somewhere decent to crash until we figure this out. Very well, Chiron conceded. Naruto, you're welcome to accept Thalia's offer, or we can prepare accommodations here in the big house. The choice is yours. Naruto glanced at Thalia, catching something in her expression, not vulnerability exactly, but a hint of uncertainty beneath her confident exterior. She'd extended herself by making the offer, stepped beyond her usual boundaries. To refuse would be to reject not just the accommodation but the tentative connection forming between them. Thanks, he said with a genuine smile. I'd be honored to stay in Zeus's cabin. Something like relief flickered across Thalia's face before her usual confident demeanor reasserted itself. Good. Fair warning though, I've been told I snore like thunder. Perks of being Zeus's kid. Percy snorted. That's not a perk, that's a natural disaster. Last campout, we thought a monster was attacking until we realized it was just you sawing logs. Bite me, Jackson, she retorted. But there was no real heat in the words, just the comfortable rhythm of old friends who'd faced life and death together. Watching their easy camaraderie, Naruto felt a pang of homesickness for his own circle in Konoha, Sakura's strength, Sai's awkward honesty, Kakashi's quiet wisdom. Would they understand what had happened to him? Were they searching for him even now? As the meeting adjourned, campers began filtering toward the dining pavilion for dinner. The setting sun painted camp half-blood in hues of gold and amber, transforming the strange architecture into something almost familiar in its otherworldly beauty. Despite his disorientation and the lingering throb behind his eyes, Naruto felt a curious sense of anticipation. This world, these people, why were unlike anything he'd encountered before. Yet there was something about them, about this place, that called to something deep within him. Something that had been waiting to be awakened. Much like his eyes. Zeus's cabin was simultaneously impressive and austere, a massive marble mausoleum with polished columns and heavy bronze doors emblazoned with lightning bolts. Inside, the ceiling opened to the sky, currently displaying a breathtaking sunset. Alcoves along the walls held bronze braziers with eternally burning flames that cast dancing shadows across mosaic-tiled floors depicting eagles and thunderclouds. "Home sweet home," Thalia said as she pushed open the heavy doors. "Not exactly cozy, but the view's unbeatable." "It's incredible," Naruto replied honestly, taking in the majestic architecture. After the sensory overload of dimensional travel and information bombardment, the cabin's quiet dignity felt soothing. "Thank you for sharing it." "No big deal," she said with practiced nonchalance, though something in her posture suggested otherwise. "There's a spare bunk over there. Technically it's for any other children of Zeus, but since Dad's supposed to be honoring his oath about not having more demigod kids, it stays empty." Naruto set his meager possessions, weapon pouches, soldier pills, a few scrolls, on the indicated bunk. The mattress was surprisingly comfortable, yielding beneath his weight as he sat to remove his sandals. "So," Thalia said, leaning against a marble column, "those clones of yours, any practical applications besides fighting?" The question caught Naruto off guard, though he supposed it shouldn't have. Every skilled warrior assessed new techniques for their utility. Tons. Reconnaissance, training, labor, information gathering. When a clone dispels, all its memories transfer back to me. I can send clones to study different subjects simultaneously, then absorb all their knowledge at once. Thalia's eyes widened. "You're kidding. That would be revolutionary for demigod training. Do you know how many ancient languages and combat forms we have to learn? How many myths and prophecies we need to memorize? I never thought about using them that way," Naruto admitted. "In Konoha, I mostly used them for combat and training physical techniques. But yeah, they'd work for academic stuff too. Annabeth would sell her favorite architecture book for that ability," Thalia laughed. "So, what else can you do besides clones and that wind attack?" For the next hour, they exchanged techniques and abilities, Naruto describing his various jutsu while Thalia demonstrated her lightning control, summoning miniature arcs between her fingertips and creating static charges that made her short black hair stand on end. The conversation flowed naturally, two warriors finding common ground in their respective arsenals. "Your lightning affinity and my wind nature would work well together in combat," Naruto observed. "In my world, wind amplifies lightning techniques, making them more powerful and focused." "Really?" Thalia's eyes lit with interest. "We should test that sometime. See if chakra and godly powers interact the same way here." "I'd like that," Naruto said, surprised by how much he meant it. Despite the circumstances, or perhaps because of them, he felt a connection forming with this fierce, blue-eyed daughter of Zeus. Her blunt manner reminded him of Sakura, but there was something uniquely compelling about Thalia, a raw intensity tempered by hard-won wisdom. Dinner in the pavilion introduced more camp traditions, magical goblets that filled with any beverage desired, nymphs serving platters of food, the ritual sacrifice of portions to the gods. Naruto sat at Zeus's table with Thalia, an arrangement he had drew curious glances from other campers but no open challenges. "Normally it's against the rules to sit at another god's table," Percy explained from the neighboring Poseidon table. "But since you're not technically claimed by any god, and Thalia invited you to her cabin, the rules have some flexibility," Annabeth finished from the Athena table. "Especially considering your unique situation." The meal passed pleasantly enough, though Naruto noticed Thalia growing increasingly tense as the evening progressed. Her eyes frequently darted to the sky visible through the open pavilion roof, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. "Is everything okay?" he finally asked as they walked back toward Zeus's cabin, the night sky ablaze with more stars than he'd ever seen in Konoha. Thalia's shoulders tensed momentarily before she forced them to relax, just waiting for the other sandal to drop. "My father isn't known for his tolerance of unexpected guests in his sacred spaces. I half expected a lightning bolt response to my invitation. Should I be worried about being incinerated in my sleep?" Naruto asked, only half joking. She laughed, the sound unexpectedly musical. "Probably not. Dad's dramatic but not usually impulsive. Besides, you saved his daughter's life today. That buys you some goodwill, even with Zeus." They paused at the cabin steps, the moonlight catching the electric blue of Thalia's eyes, rendering them almost luminous. For a moment, Naruto was struck by how the color matched the chakra he visualized during wind release techniques, pure, potent energy. Listen, she said suddenly. About tomorrow, Chiron will want to run all kinds of tests on those eyes of yours. The Apollo kids will want to check your vital signs. Annabeth will interrogate you about dimensional theory until your ears bleed. It can be overwhelming. I can handle it, Naruto assured her, touched by her concern. I know you can, she replied with surprising conviction. I've seen a lot of powerful beings. Naruto. Gods, titans, monsters. But there's something about you that's different. You have this certainty. Like you know exactly who you are, regardless of what powers you have or where you come from. Quote, the observation struck closer to home than she could have realized. Throughout his life, Naruto had defined himself not by the 9 tails sealed within him or his parents' legacies, but by his own chosen bonds and principles. His ninja way. Where I come from, he said quietly, there's a saying, the will of fire. It means protecting what's precious to you, carrying on the dreams of those who came before. It's not about what powers you have, but how you use them and why. Thalia studied him, moonlight silvering her features. I like that. The will of fire. She tasted the words as if considering their merit. In our world, demigods often struggle with their identities, trying to balance our mortal heritage with divine power and expectations. It's complicated. I understand complicated heritage, Naruto said with a rueful smile. Trust me, something sparked between them in that moment, recognition of kindred spirits despite their vastly different origins. 2 powerful beings shaped by complex legacies, determined to forge their own paths. The moment shattered as a thunderous boom echoed across the camp, reverberating through the marble columns of Zeus's cabin. Thalia tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for her spear. That wasn't thunder, she said unnecessarily. Naruto was already moving, chakra surging through his system. Without conscious thought, his eyes transformed, the world snapping into supernatural focus. Through the cabin's open roof, he could see energy patterns rippling across the night sky, fract. Disturbances similar to the one that had brought him to this dimension. Something's coming through, he said, heading for the door. Another rift, like the one that brought me here. They ed toward the source of the disturbance, the same hillside where Naruto had first appeared. Other campers converged from all directions, weapons drawn. Chiron galloped ahead of the group, his expression grave as he assessed the situation. The rift hung in midair, a shimmering tear in reality that pulsed with chaotic energy. Unlike the fracture that had transported Naruto, this one seemed unstable, its edges jagged and erratic. It's not stabilizing, Annabeth called, checking readings on a bronze device. The energy signature is similar to earlier today, but the pattern is degraded, almost corrupted. Naruto stepped forward, his enhanced vision tracing the energy flows. Where the previous rift had featured ordered, almost geometric patterns, this one writhed with discordant energies. Chi clashed and sparked against each other. Something's wrong, he said, instinctively channeling chakra to his palm. This isn't a natural opening. It's being forced. As if in response to his assessment, the rift convulsed violently, expanding outward in a blast of pressure that staggered the gathered demigods. From within the dimensional tear emerged a figure, humanoid but clearly not human, its proportions subtly wrong in ways that disturbed the eye. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered between translucent and obsidian black. Its face featured no recognizable features except for eyes, dozens of them, covering its head in no discernible pattern, each a different color and shape. Some resembled human eyes, others the vertical slits of reptiles or the compound orbs of insects. What is that thing? Percy demanded, uncapping Riptide. The celestial bronze sword glowed faintly in the darkness. Nothing from Greek mythology, Chiron replied grimly, notching an arrow to his bow. At least, nothing I've encountered in 3,000 years. The creature's head swiveled with unnatural fluidity, its myriad eyes blinking independently as it surveyed the gathered demigods. When its gaze fell upon Naruto, every eye snapped into focus, pupils dilating simultaneously. Sharingan, it hissed, the word emerging not from a mouth but seemingly from the air around it. Found you. Naruto's body moved instinctively, years of combat training taking over. Everyone back, he shouted, forming shadow clones that positioned themselves between the creature and the campers. The entity moved with impossible speed, crossing the distance to Naruto faster than even his enhanced vision could track. One moment it stood by the rift, the next it was before him. A limb that was neither arm nor tentacle but something in between lashing toward his face. Thalia's spear intercepted the strike, electricity arcing along its shaft into the creature's form. The entity recoiled, its body rippling like disturbed water. "It has physical form," she called out. "It can be hurt." The assessment galvanized the campers. Arrows flew from Apollo cabin members, Celestial. Bronze blades slashed from the Ares contingent, and Percy summoned a wave from a nearby creek to slam into the creature. The entity responded with terrifying adaptability. Its form shifted and flowed around attacks, absorbing some while reflecting others back at the demigods with amplified force. An arrow bounced off its surface, returning toward the archer with twice its original velocity. Perk. Wise water attack evaporated into caustic steam upon contact. "Physical attacks aren't working," Annabeth shouted. "We need something else." Naruto's mind raced, analyzing the creature's movements and reactions. Its focus remained fixed on him, specifically, on his eyes. Whatever this entity was, it had come through the dimensional barrier specifically for the Sharingan. An idea formed. Dangerous, potentially catastrophic. But their best chance. He locked eyes with Thalia across the battlefield, seeing immediate understanding in her expression. Without words, they coordinated their movements, positioning themselves on opposite sides of the creature. "On my mark," Naruto called, hands already forming seals. Chakra gathered in his palm, wind nature shaping into a spiraling sphere. Rasengan. Simultaneously, Thalia raised her spear toward the storm-heavy sky. "Father, answer my call." Lightning split the heavens, connecting with her spear tip in a blinding flash. The creature hesitated, momentarily confused by the dual threat. "Now," Naruto shouted, charging forward with Rasengan extended. Thalia channeled the lightning through her body, directing it not at the creature but at Naruto's Rasengan. Wind and lightning chakra combined, elements that naturally amplified each other in Naruto's world. The result exceeded even his expectations. The Rasengan transformed, expanding into a howling maelstrom of electrified wind chakra that illuminated the entire hillside with blue-white light. The creature shrieked, its many eyes widening in what might have been fear. "Number," it protested, form beginning to destabilize. "The eye must." Asterisk. Its words cut off as Naruto drove the enhanced Rasengan into its center mass. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to splinter around the point of impact. The creature's form collapsed inward, drawn into the spiraling vortex of the technique. With a sound like tearing fabric, the entity imploded, the dimensional rift collapsing with it. The backlash sent Naruto flying backward. He hit the ground hard, rolling several times before coming to rest against a pine tree. Pain lanced through his body, but it was the pain in his eyes that overwhelmed him. Molten agony that drew a raw scream from his throat. Thalia reached him first, her own hands scorched from channeling divine lightning. "Naruto, are you all right?" He couldn't answer, couldn't even open his eyes. The evolutionary process that had been gradually stabilizing accelerated exponentially, triggered by the combined energies of the attack and the creature's destruction. He felt blood trickling from his tear ducts, copper salt on his lips. "Get Apollo's healers," Thalia shouted. Now, gentle hands supported his head. Through the haze of pain, Naruto sensed multiple presences gathering around him. Chiron's ancient aura, Percy's sea-tinged energy, Annabeth's focused intensity, and strongest of all, Thalia's electric presence. "Hang in there, Whiskers," she murmured, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "We've got you." As consciousness began to fade, Naruto caught fragments of urgent conversation above him. "Never seen anything like it. Dimensional Hunter, maybe." Quote, coming specifically for him. "Eyes are still changing. Prophecy might be relevant after all." The last thing he registered before darkness claimed him was a sensation he'd experienced only once before, the night he'd learned the truth about the Nine Tails. The feeling of standing at a threshold, life fundamentally divided into before and after. Whatever he had been before crossing dimensions, whatever he might have become in Konoha, that path was closed now. Something new was emerging, shaped by this strange world and its ancient powers. Something divine. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, Worlds in Collision. Consciousness returned to Naruto in fragments, first sound, then sensation, finally sight. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with something sweeter. Like sun-ripened strawberries. A cool cloth dabbed at his forehead while unfamiliar voices murmured nearby. When he finally managed to pry his eyelids open, blinding light forced them shut again immediately. "Easy there," a melodic voice cautioned. "Your eyes underwent significant trauma. Take it slow." Naruto tried again, squinting through his lashes. A young man with golden hair bent over him, hands glowing with soft amber light that pulsed in rhythm with Naruto's heartbeat. Behind him stood other figures, blurry at first, then gradually sharpening into Chiron, Percy, and Annabeth. "Welcome back," the centaur said, relief evident in his ancient eyes. "You gave us quite the scare." "How long?" Naruto's voice emerged as a rasp, his throat desert dry. 38 hours, the golden-haired healer answered, passing him a glass of something that looked like honey but flowed like water. "I'm Will Solace, head counselor of Apollo Cabin. You're in our infirmary." Naruto sipped cautiously, then more deeply as the liquid sent waves of revitalizing energy coursing through his system. It tasted of summer afternoons and victory celebrations, reminiscent of Ichiraku's ramen after a successful mission. "Nectar," Will explained, noting his reaction. "Food of the gods. Works wonders on demigods, though we have to be careful with the dosage. Too much can literally burn a half-blood from the inside out." He paused, studying Naruto with professional curiosity. "Interestingly, you seem to metabolize it differently. More efficiently than most demigods, but without the combustion risk of mortals." "Where's Thalia?" Naruto asked, pushing himself upright against the pillows. The absence of her electric presence registered more keenly than he wanted to admit. "Border Patrol," Annabeth supplied. "After what happened, we've doubled security around camp. She specifically requested the North Quadrant, hasn't left it except to check on you." A knowing look crossed her face that Naruto chose to ignore. Memories of the dimensional creature flooded back, its unnatural form, its fixation on his eyes, the way it had specifically targeted him. That thing, what was it? The four exchanged glances laden with unspoken concerns. Chiron stepped forward, his tail swishing in agitation. "We have theories, but no definitive answers. Its composition appeared to be a foe. Of exotic matter not native to our dimension or yours. Most troubling was its apparent sentience and singular focus on your Sharingan. Whatever it was," Percy added, "it wasn't working alone. At Rift was artificially created, a forced entry point rather than a natural dimensional overlap like the one that brought you here. Someone or something sent it after me," Naruto concluded grimly. "For these." He gestured toward his eyes, then paused, noticing something odd in their reaction. His vision felt different, clearer, yet somehow more comprehensive, even without actively channeling chakra. "Will produced a polished bronze mirror. You might want to see this." Naruto's reflection startled him. His eyes, normally cobalt blue, now held a permanent undertone of shifting gold, subtle but unmistakable. Like sunlight through clear water. The effect was barely noticeable unless one looked directly, but it marked a fundamental change. "The transformation appears to have stabilized," Chiron explained. "Your Sharingan now exists in a state of semi-activation, enhancing your baseline vision without the full manifestation. When you actively channel chakra," he gestured for Naruto to try. The familiar sensation of chakra flowing to his eyes triggered an immediate transformation, but not to the crimson Sharingan he expected. Instead, his irises bloomed into geometric patterns deepest indigo traced with intricate golden filaments. The world around him instantly shifted into hyperfocus, energy signatures becoming visible, time seeming to slow as his perception accelerated. "Remarkable," Will breathed, his own golden aura now visible to Naruto's enhanced sight. "The structure is completely different from what witnesses described before the incident." "Evolution through catalysis," Annabeth theorized, her gray eyes shining with intellectual excitement. "The combined energy of your Rasengan, Thalia's divine lightning, and the dimensional creature's destruction must have accelerated the transformation process that was already underway." The infirmary door banged open, cutting off further speculation as Thalia strode in, windswept and radiating tension. Her elect, Rick blue gaze immediately locked with Naruto's, relief washing over her features before being quickly suppressed beneath her usual confident demeanor. About time you woke up, Whiskers, she said, Doctor. Hopping into the chair beside his bed with affected casualness. Some of us have been pulling double shifts while you napped. The familiar nickname, bestowed after their first encounter, brought an unexpected warmth to Naruto's chest. Despite her flippant tone, dark circles beneath her eyes told of sleepless vigilance. His enhanced vision caught subtle details others might miss, the faint tremble in her hands, quickly stilled. The way her eyes repeatedly traced his face, cataloging changes, the nearly imperceptible relaxation of her shoulders now that she could see him awake. Miss me, he quipped, matching her casual tone while his eyes conveyed deeper understanding. Something flickered across her face, vulnerability quickly masked with an exasperated eye roll. Like a case of poison ivy. But since you're apparently not dying anymore, you should probably know, the gods have summoned you to Olympus. That announcement silenced the room. Even Chiron looked taken aback. When did this come through? The centaur asked. About 20 minutes ago. Thalia extracted a scroll sealed with golden wax from her jacket pocket. Hermes delivered it personally. Full council meeting at sunset, attendance mandatory. She hesitated. My father specifically requested Naruto's presence. Percy whistled low. A full council for a non-demigod. That's unprecedented. As is a visitor from another dimension with eyes connected to primordial powers, Annabeth pointed out pragmatically. The question is whether this is an investigative council or a tribunal. What's the difference? Naruto asked, already suspecting the answer. One is them asking questions, Percy replied grimly. The other is them deciding your fate. 3 hours later, Naruto stood at the foot of the Empire State Building. Neck craned back as he tried to comprehend its impossible height. Around him, New York City roared and pulsed with more humanity than he'd ever witnessed in one place, millions of lives packed into towering structures of glass and steel, their collective energy a dizzying cacophony to his enhanced senses. It's overwhelming at first, Thalia acknowledged, watching his expression with understanding. Try not to focus on everything at once. Filter it like you would background noise during combat. Naruto nodded, adjusting his chakra flow to dampen his perception. The modern world assaulted his senses in ways Konoha never had. Cars bellowing and screeching, advertisements flashing from massive screens, thousands of conversations overlapping into white noise, the mingled sense of street food, exhaust fumes, and humanity. This is considered normal? He asked, gesturing to the chaos around them. Welcome to mortal civilization, circa 21st century, Thalia replied with a hint of irony. Try not to look too impressed. New Yorkers pride themselves on being unimpressible. Their escort to Olympus consisted of Thalia as Zeus's daughter, Annabeth as official architect of Olympus, and Percy as someone who might prevent the gods from making hasty decisions, according to Chiron. The centaur himself had remained at camp, coordinating heightened security measures after the dimensional incursion. 600th floor, Thalia told the security guard at the desk, who barely glanced up from his newspaper before handing over a key card. Elevators over there. Make sure no mortals follow you in. The mundane exchange preceding their ascent to the home of the gods struck Naruto as oddly familiar. How many times had he entered the Hokage Tower through side entrances, using casual greetings to mask missions of vital importance? The gods maintain the separation between mortal reality and divine domains through something called the mist, Annabeth explained as they entered the elevator. It's a force that obscures supernatural elements from most mortal perception. If an ordinary human looked at you right now, they probably wouldn't notice the unusual qualities of your eyes. Unless they have clear sight, Percy added. Some mortals can see through the mist. My mom can. The elevator ascended with surprising speed, classical music playing incongruously in the background. When the doors finally opened, Naruto stepped into a reality that defied earthly architecture. Olympus sprawled before them, a mountainous citadel floating impossibly above Manhattan. Its marble structures gleaming in the setting sun. Temples and palaces dominated the landscape, connected by sweeping bridges and staircases that seemed to defy gravity. Fountains sprayed water in mesmerizing patterns. Gardens bloomed with plants no mortal botany textbook had catalogued, and ethereal music drifted on air that tasted of mountain peaks and ozone. Most surprising were the inhabitants, minor gods, nymphs, satyrs, and other mythological beings going about their business with the casual demeanor of anyone in their home territory. They paused to stare as the group passed, whispers following in their wake. "Your handiwork," Naruto asked Annabeth, noticing her pride as they passed particularly impressive structures. "Post-Titan War reconstruction," she confirmed. "Zeus Apo inted me official architect after I proved myself in battle. My mother's influence, but I like to think I earned the position through merit." "She's being modest," Percy said, slipping his hand into hers. Annabeth revolutionized divine architecture, incorporating both ancient Greek principles and sustainable design elements. Even Athena was impressed. The main palace of the gods dominated the highest point of the mountain, a massive structure of blinding white marble with gold and silver inlays that shifted in patterns reminiscent of constellations. Its columns reached skyward, proportioned, with mathematical perfection that somehow registered as both beautiful and slightly unsettling. At the entrance stood twin guards unlike any beings Naruto had encountered, females with serpent trunks instead of legs. Armor gleaming with unnatural light, spears crackling with energy that registered to his senses as distinctly divine. "Scythian Dracine," Thalia muttered, reformed after pledging loyalty to Olympus. "Don't stare at their lower halves, they're sensitive about it." The throne room beyond dwarfed even the grandest spaces in Konoha, its ceiling opening directly to the night sky. Air stars blazed with supernatural brightness. 12 massive thrones arranged in a U-shape dominated the chamber, each unique in design and radiating power that made the air thick with divine energy. And upon those thrones sat beings that stretched the definition of humanoid, each standing over 20 feet tall, their features too perfect to be natural, their eyes containing depths that suggested millennia of existence. Though they appeared as men and women in elaborate clothing, their true nature leaked through in subtle ways, the storm clouds gathering in one's beard, flowers blooming spontaneously around another's feet, the metallic shifting of another's skin like liquid armor. Naruto had stood before powerful beings before, the 5 cage-tailed beasts, even Kekkei herself. But the collective presence of the Olympian Council struck him on a level beyond chakra, beyond physical power. These were concepts given form, primal forces wearing human shapes as convenient disguises. "Kneel," Thalia whispered urgently as they approached the center of the U formation. "Protocol matters here." Naruto followed her lead, dropping to one knee alongside Percy and Annabeth. He kept his head respectfully lowered, but his senses remained hyperaware of every movement, every energy fluctuation in the room. "Rise," commanded a voice like distant thunder. "Let us see the visitor from beyond our reality." Naruto stood, meeting the gaze of the central figure, a powerfully built man with a neatly trimmed beard containing miniature lightning strikes, dressed in a dark pinstriped suit that Sama emphasized rather than diminished his divine aura. Zeus, king of the gods, whose physical resemblance to Thalia was subtle but unmistakable in the intensity of his electric blue eyes. "Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure," Zeus intoned, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. "You stand before the Council of Olympus, summoned to account for your unexpected arrival and the disturbance that followed." A woman seated beside him, regal and beautiful, with peacock feathers woven into her gown, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. "Let us be direct. What are you, exactly?" "Our instruments register you as neither mortal nor demigod nor god, yet you possess powers that resonate with ancient forces." "I'm a shinobi," Naruto answered simply, instinctively understanding that straightforward truth would serve him best here. "A ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village in the Land of Fire. In my world, I'm classified as human, though I contain the chakra beast known as the Nine-Tailed Fox." Murmu RS rippled through the council at this revelation. A god with remarkably similar features to Percy, Poseidon, presumably, frowned thoughtfully. "This chakra beast you mention, is it comparable to our Typhon? A primordial force of destruction. The Nine Tails is a being of conscious chakra, originally created by the Sage of Six Paths," Naruto explained. "It was sealed within me at birth by my father, the fourth Hokage. Over time, Kurama and I have formed a partnership rather than a restrained prisoner relationship." "Fascinating," commented a goddess with intense gray eyes, clearly Annabeth's mother, Athena. Your dimension appears to have developed entirely different metaphysical structures for supernatural power. Yet those eyes of yours. She leaned forward, studying him with analytical precision. They bear patterns consistent with primordial script from our earliest history. A beautiful goddess with kaleidoscopic eyes that shifted through every color imaginable. Aphrodite, Naruto guessed, tittered behind her hand. Can we perhaps acknowledge the obvious? This young man radiates divine energy, yet claims no godly heritage from his own world. Clearly, something extraordinary has occurred. Or something deceptive. Countered a god with cruel handsome features and a military buzz cut. Ares, god of war. For all we know, this could be an elaborate infiltration attempt. The Titans have tried subtler approaches. Naruto maintained his composure, understanding that divine politics likely resembled the maneuvering among hidden villages, alliances, suspicions, and power plays woven through every interaction. He focused on Zeus, recognizing the ultimate authority in the room. I have no intention of deception, Lord Zeus, he stated clearly. I came to this world through no intention of my own. Drawn by a dimensional rift that appeared during a mission. Since arriving, I've defended your daughter against a minotaur and helped repel a dimensional entity that specifically targeted me. My goal is simply to understand why I'm here and what connection exists between our worlds. Zeus's expression remained impassive, though lightning flickered momentarily in his beard. You fought alongside my daughter. We combined our abilities against the dimensional creature, Naruto confirmed. Her lightning amplified my wind nature chakra, creating a technique powerful enough to collapse the rift and destroy the entity. Thalia stepped forward, her posture respectfully formal yet unintimidated. Father, Naruto saved my life against the Minotaur, then risked his own to protect camp from the dimensional intruder. His actions have been honorable and his abilities invaluable. The endorsement clearly carried weight. Zeus studied his daughter for a moment, something unspoken passing between them before he turned his attention back to Naruto. Show us these eyes, he commanded. Their full manifestation. Naruto nodded, channeling chakra with practiced control. The transformation washed over his vision immediately, the world sharpening into hyperclarity as his irises shifted to indigo with golden geometric patterns. He heard several gods inhale sharply, felt the collective divine attention intensify to an almost physical pressure. By the fates, breathed a goddess with auburn hair and silvery eyes, Artemis, he guessed. Those patterns, they're older than Olympus itself. Older than the Titans, agreed a god with winged sandals who seemed unable to sit still, Hermes. I've seen similar scripts in forgotten places between worlds during my travels. Zeus rose from his throne, his form shrinking as he descended until he stood at nearly twice Naruto's height rather than 5 times it. The king of gods circled him slowly, examining the manifestation of his eyes from different angles. Athena, Zeus finally said. Your assessment. The wisdom goddess joined her father, her own form reducing to more manageable proportions. The base pattern resembles what mortals now call the flower of life, a sacred geometric template found in ancient cultures across the world. But these golden filaments, she traced a pattern in the air that mirrored what Naruto could feel in his own eyes. They're consistent with Mnemosyne's script, but with modifications suggesting adaptation to a different power system. Primordial bleed through, suggested an elder L.Y. appearing god with grapevines twining through his hair, Dionysus. Wouldn't be the first time. Remember the Bermuda incidents in the 1700s. Zeus returned to his throne, resuming his full majestic height. The council will deliberate privately. Daughter, escort our visitor and his companions to the observatory atrium. Athena, dispatch your daughter Sophia to meet them there. Her research into dimensional anomalies may prove relevant. Quote, as they were ushered from the throne room, Naruto caught fragments of divine debate erupting behind them, voices that shook the marble and made the air shimmer with power. What just happened? He asked once they were beyond earshot. You didn't get obliterated on sight, which counts as a win when dealing with Olympians, Percy replied with characteristic bluntness. Especially with those eyes of yours triggering recognition of primordial powers. The gods get nervous about anything predating their reign. Thalia nodded agreement. The fact that Zeus called for Sophia is significant. She's one of Athena's most brilliant children, specializes in theoretical physics and ancient dimensional theory. If anyone can make sense of your situation, it's her. The observatory atrium proved to be a breathtaking space, a circular chamber with walls that somehow opened to views of multiple cosmic phenomena simultaneously. One section displayed the spiral arm of the Milky Way as if observed from impossible proximity, another showed the surface of distant planets in real time, a third displayed what appeared to be the quantum fabric of reality itself, particles blinking in and out of existence according to mathematical patterns that Naruto's enhanced vision could almost decode. They'd barely had time to absorb their surroundings when the atrium doors opened to admit a young woman carrying an armload of scrolls and tablets. Physically, she presented a striking contrast to the demigods Naruto had met thus far: South Asian features, deep brown skin, hair in elaborate braids woven with mathematical symbols that seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. She wore simple jeans and a t-shirt emblazoned with an equation too complex for Naruto to decipher, but moved with the purposeful confidence of someone comfortable in divine surroundings. Sophia Nakamura, she introduced herself, dumping her materials on a nearby table. Daughter of Athena, theoretical physicist specializing in transdimensional mathematics and mythological energy systems. Her handshake was firm, her dark eyes immediately focusing on Naruto's with scientific intensity. You must be the dimensional anomaly everyone's talking about. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied, finding her directness refreshing after the formal posturing of the Divine Council. And apparently, yes, brilliant, she said, without a trace of sarcasm. I've been researching dimensional boundaries for 6 years, and suddenly you literally fall through one. Do you have any idea how statistically improbable that is? The mathematical odds against your specific transference are astronomical. Her enthusiasm reminded Naruto of Sakura in research mode, the same focused intensity and rapid-fire analytical approach. But where Sakura's expertise lay in medical jutsu and chakra manipulation, Sophia clearly navigated theoretical realms that transcended conventional physics. I've paired some preliminary models based on the energy readings from your arrival point, she continued, spreading diagrams across the table. The dimensional membrane between our realities shows unprecedented thinning patterns consistent with targeted erosion rather than natural degradation. Meaning someone or something deliberately weakened the barrier, Annabeth translated, leaning over the diagrams with professional interest. Precisely. Sophia's fingers traced energy patterns that looked remarkably similar to what Naruto's enhanced vision had shown him at the dimensional rift. The question is, why target this specific junction point? And why was Naruto specifically drawn through? Her questions hung in the air as she finally paused, dark eyes lifting to study him more thoroughly. May I? She asked, gesturing toward his face. Naruto nodded, and she stepped closer, examining his eyes with clinical detachment. Fascinating, she murmured. Even without full activation, the patterns are visible at certain light angles. She produced a small device that projected a grid of light across his irises. The golden substructure appears to function as a dimensional anchor, preventing further uncontrolled shifting between realities. Your eyes have essentially stabilized you in our dimension. That's why the creature targeted his eyes specifically, Thalia realized, moving closer. It wanted the dimensional interface they represent. Sophia nodded vigorously. Exactly. These aren't just visual organs, they're dimensional interfaces that perceive and potentially manipulate the boundaries between realities. Her expression grew thoughtful. The question is whether this was their original purpose in your world, or if they've adapted since your arrival here. Before Naruto could respond, a shimmering light manifested in the center of the atrium. The air rippled like disturbed water, then parted to reveal Athena herself, now human-sized though still radiating divine authority that made the room feel suddenly smaller. The council has reached certain preliminary conclusions, the wisdom goddess announced without preamble. Naruto Uzumaki will remain under Olympian observation while we investigate the dimensional anomalies. He is granted provisional protected status, provided he assists in our investigation and refrains from using his powers outside authorized parameters. Thalia stepped forward, her posture respectfully formal yet determined. With respect, Lady Athena, Naruto has already demonstrated his willingness to protect Camp Half-Blood. Restricting his abilities could endanger both him and others if another dimensional incursion occurs. Athena regarded her brother's daughter with calculating eyes. A reasonable concern. Very well. He may use his powers in defensive situations and controlled testing environments. Sophia will coordinate research efforts to determine the nature of these dimensional breaches and their connection to his unique attributes. The goddess turned her penetrating gaze directly to Naruto. I've reviewed the limited historical records concerning dimensional interactions with our world. There are certain patterns emerging that concern me greatly. The symbols manifest in your eyes bear striking similarities to artifacts from what we call the Proto-Pantheon period, before Olympians, before Titans, when primordial forces still walked the earth without distinct personification. You think I'm connected to these primordial forces? Naruto asked carefully. I think, Athena replied with measured precision, at something ancient recognized something in you. Whether that recognition is coincidental, deliberate, or predestined remains to be determined. She gestured toward Sophia. My daughter will help you explore these connections. She has my full confidence in matters of dimensional theory. With that pronouncement, the goddess dissolved into golden light, leaving the atrium feeling somehow emptier. Despite the additional space her departure created. Well, Sophia said brightly into the ensuing silence. No pressure or anything, just investigating primordial forces that predate the gods themselves. Typical Tuesday. Percy snorted. At least they didn't decide to smite first and ask questions later. That's progress for Olympians. Don't push our luck, Thalia warned, though her posture had relaxed noticeably. We should head back to camp while we're still in everyone's good graces. As they prepared to depart, Sophia gathered her materials with practiced efficiency. I'll meet you at camp tomorrow morning. Bring coffee. This is going to require significant caffeine. The return journey from Olympus passed in contemplative silence, each processing the implications of the Divine Council's decision. Night had fully descended on Manhattan, transforming the city into a galaxy of artificial stars that stretched to the horizon in geometric constellations. From the observation deck of the Empire State Building, Naruto absorbed the vastness of this modern world, so different from the feudal technological hybrid of the shinobi nations, yet resonating with familiar patterns of human ambition, creativity, and resilience. It's something, isn't it? Thalia said quietly, joining him at the railing. All those lives down there, most of them completely unaware of gods and monsters and dimensional visitors. A wry smile played across her lips. Sometimes I envy them. In Konoha, everyone knows about shinobi, Naruto replied, watching headlights flow like luminous rivers through the city streets. They see our power as protection, not something to fear or worship. It's different here, this separation between mortal and divine. The mist maintains the boundary, Thalia explained. Keeps ordinary humans from going insane at the sight of minotaurs on Main Street or furies in flight overhead. But sometimes I wonder if it's really protecting them, or just protecting the gods. Ability to remain detached from mortal consequences. The subtle criticism of divine governance reminded Naruto of conversations with Shikamaru about the feudal lord system, the same questioning of traditional power structures that had always resonated with his own belief in earned authority rather than inherited position. In my world, the strongest shinobi becomes Hokage, village leader, he told her. But strength alone isn't enough. They must also earn the acknowledgement of their people. My dream was always to become Hokage, to be recognized and respected for who I am, not feared for the power I contain. Something in his tone must have conveyed the uncertain status of that dream now that he was stranded in another dimension. Thalia's expression softened momentarily before she caught herself and reverted to her usual challenging demeanor. Sounds like a solid system, she remarked. Around here, gods rule because they overthrew the previous management, not because anyone voted them into office. Though to be fair, the alternatives weren't exactly democracy advocates either. Their conversation paused as Percy and Annabeth rejoined them, having arranged transportation back to camp. Argus is waiting with the van, Annabeth announced, and I suggest we hurry. There's a storm front moving in that doesn't feel entirely natural. On cue, thunder rumbled overhead, clouds gathering with unnatural speed. The air pressure dropped suddenly, raising goosebumps along Naruto's arms. That's not my father's work, Thalia said grimly, her expertise in storm patterns evident in her concerned expression. The electrical patterns are all wrong, there's no divine signature. Naruto activated his enhanced vision, the world immediately shifting into supernatural focus. Through his Sharingan-derived sight, he could see energy disturbances rippling through the atmosphere above Manhattan, patterns eerily similar to those surrounding the dimensional rift that had brought him to this world. "We need to move," he said urgently. Now, they barely reached the elevator before the first anomaly manifested, a swirling vortex of energy that materialized 20 feet above the observation deck. Spinning with increasing velocity, unlike the jagged tear that had admitted the dimensional hunter, this disturbance appeared more controlled, its boundaries pulsing with purposeful rhythm. "That's not opening randomly," Annabeth observed, her analytical mind quickly processing the implications. "Someone's controlling it from the other side." The elevator doors slid shut just as the vortex stabilized into a perfect circular portal. Through it, Naruto glimpsed a landscape he recognized instantly, the forests surrounding Konoha, painted in moonlight. His heart leapt with momentary hope. Before his enhanced vision detected subtle wrongness in the image, trees bending at impossible angles, shadows falling counter to light sources, colors shifting through spectrums no natural flora should display. "It's a lure," he realized aloud, "a fabricated image designed to draw me toward it." The elevator descended with agonizing slowness, cutting off their view of the dimensional manifestation. Percy punched the emergency button, accelerating their descent marginally. "We need to alert Olympus," Thalia insisted, already reaching for her emergency communication device, a silver bracelet inscribed with lightning bolt patterns. "Wait," Naruto cautioned. "If we trigger divine intervention while that portal is active, we risk interdimensional conflict. The gods might perceive a threat from my world and respond with force." The potential consequences hung heavy in the confined space, two powerful realms clashing without understanding, catastrophic damage spreading across both dimensions. Naruto had witnessed enough war to recognize the warning signs of escalation. "What do you suggest?" Annabeth asked, her gray eyes sharp with strategic calculation. "We observe first," Naruto decided. "I can send shadow clones to monitor the situation while we return to camp and coordinate with Sophia. She understands the dimensional mechanics better than anyone." The elevator reached the lobby, doors opening to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. Mortals moved in confused patterns, their perception clearly altered by the mist to interpret the dimensional disturbance as something comprehensible, a gas leak, perhaps. Or electrical malfunction. Security guards directed people toward exits while maintenance workers spoke urgently into radios. "Nobody's panicking," Percy noted as they navigated through the crowd. "The mist is working overtime." Outside, the storm had intensified, unnatural lightning branching across the sky in fractals too precise to be natural phenomena. Rain fell in localized patterns, creating perfect circles of downpour surrounded by completely dry pavement. Pedestrians navigated these anomalies with blank expressions, the mist convincing them that nothing unusual was occurring. "This is beyond weather manipulation," Thalia murmured, her expertise in storms evident in her troubled expression. "Something is affecting the fundamental physical laws in localized areas." A white van idled at the curb, its driver a man covered entirely in eyes, literally hundreds of them, blinking independently across every visible surface of his body. Despite this startling appearance, he conveyed a sense of weary professionalism, like someone who had seen too much to be easily disturbed. "Argus," Annabeth greeted the many-eyed security chief. "We need to get back to camp immediately. Dimensional anomalies are manifesting." As they piled into the vehicle, Naruto created 3 shadow clones with practiced hand seals. "Monitor the disturbance," he instructed them. "Maintain distance, gather data. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary." His duplicates nodded understanding before hanging into inconspicuous forms, ordinary pedestrians indistinguishable from the thousands of others on Manhattan streets. They disappeared into the crowd as Argus pulled the van into traffic. "That's still the most useful ability I've ever seen," Thalia commented as they sped through the city. "Independent duplicates that can send information back to you. Do you know how many reconnaissance missions I could have simplified with that technique?" "It has limitations," Naruto acknowledged. "Each clone divides my chakra, and any significant damage causes them to disperse. But for observation, they're ideal." The drive back to Long Island proceeded in tense silence, broken only by occasional updates as Naruto received information from his shadow clones. The dimensional portal had remained stable for approximately 18 minutes before collapsing in on itself, leaving residual energy patterns that his clones continued to monitor. No entities emerged, he reported, processing the transferred memories. But something was definitely scanning from the other side, searching for something specific. Quote, "For you," Thalia stated flatly. "For those eyes." Naruto nodded grimly. "Most likely. The question," Annabeth interjected, "is whether the searcher is F. Rom your dimension or something else entirely. That fabricated Konoha image suggests knowledge of your world, but not necessarily origin there." The implications hung heavy in the van's interior as Hay crossed into Camp Half-Blood's protective boundaries. Even through his fatigue, Naruto felt the subtle shift as they passed from mortal territory into the domain of demigods, a lightening of dimensional pressure. As if reality itself breathed more freely here. Chiron awaited them at the big house, his ancient eyes reflecting firelight as they recounted the events at Olympus and the subsequent dimensional manifestation in Manhattan. "Troubling developments," the centaur commented when they finished. "Especially this false image of your homeland. It suggests an intelligence with access to our memories or some knowledge of your dimension, yet the distortions indicate imperfect replication. Could it be reading his mind somehow?" Percy asked. "Unlikely," Sophia answered, surprising everyone with her sudden appearance in the doorway. She carried more scrolls and tablets than before, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept since their meeting at Olympus. Transdimensions. Ional telepathy would require energy expenditures visible on multiple planar levels. What we're seeing is more consistent with reconstructed imagery based on secondary sources. She dropped her IALS on the ping-pong table that served as the camp's informal council space, immediately spreading diagrams that correlated with Naruto's shadow clone reports. "I've been analyzing the energy signatures from both incursions," she explained, fingers tracing patterns across her tablets. "The dimensional hunter that attacked you was essentially a probe, organic technology designed to locate and acquire specific energy signatures. This latest manifestation represents a more sophisticated approach, a controlled opening rather than a forced breach. Meaning whoever's behind this is refining their techniques," Annabeth concluded, studying the diagrams with professional interest. "Exactly." Sophia's expression conveyed both scientific excitement and strategic concern. "They're learning, adapting. The question is whether we're dealing with curious exploration or hostile intent." "The dimensional hunter tried to rip my eyes out," Naruto pointed out dryly. "I'm leaning toward hostile." "Fair point," Sophia acknowledged with a slight smile that transformed her serious features. "Though in scientific terms, resource acquisition doesn't necessarily indicate malevolence, just prioritization of objectives over ethical considerations regarding the research subject. That's supposed to be comforting?" Thalia asked incredulously. "I didn't say it was comforting," Sophia replied, unperturbed. "Just accurate. Understanding motive helps predict behavior." The conversation continued late into the night, strategies proposed and discarded as they assessed their limited options against an unknown transdimensional threat. Throughout the discussion, Naruto found himself increasingly impressed with Sophia's analytical approach. Her mind worked differently from any shinobi tactician he'd encountered, approaching problems through mathematical models and theoretical frameworks that transcended conventional strategic thinking. "Your dimensional transference wasn't random," she concluded after hours of analysis. "The statistical improbability exceeds rational explanation. Something specifically selected you, or more precisely, the latent potential in your genetic structure that manifested as these evolved eyes." "But why?" Naruto pressed. "What makes these eyes so important that something would breach dimensional barriers to acquire them?" "That," Sophia said with scholarly precision, "is the $10 billion question. And I intend to find out." Dawn found Naruto on the beach, practicing taijutsu katas to center his mind and acclimate his body to the subtle but significant differences in this dimension's physical laws. Gravity pulled slightly differently here, air resistance operated on modified principles, and even the flow of natural energy felt altered in ways his sage training hadn't prepared him for. The morning air carried salt and strawberries, the signature scent of Camp Half-Blood, while gulls wheeled overhead, occasionally diving for fish that glittered like living silver in the clear waters of Long Island Sound. Despite the tranquil setting, Naruto maintained hyper-awareness of his surroundings, his senses extended to detect any dimensional fluctuations similar to yesterday's manifestations. "Your form is exceptional," observed a voice from nearby dunes. "Though your weight distribution suggests compensation for different gravitational constants." Sophia picked her way down to the beach. Hair freshly braided with new mathematical symbols, a steaming thermos in each hand. She offered one to Naruto, who accepted gratefully. "Coffee," she explained, unnecessarily as the rich aroma reached him. "Humanity's greatest invention. Well, that and calculus, but calculus doesn't taste nearly as good at 5 in the morning." Naruto sipped cautiously. Nding, the bitter brew surprisingly pleasant after initial adjustment. "We have tea ceremonies in my world, but nothing like this. Different dimensions, different stimulants." Sophia settled cross-legged on the sand. Tablet already in hand. "I've been correlating energy readings from your arrival with astronomical data and mythological records. 3 interesting patterns emerged." She displayed a series of charts showing overlapping waveforms. "First, dimensional thinning between our worlds occurs in cyclical patterns corresponding to specific celestial alignments, approximately once every 327 years. Second, these cycles correlate with historical anomalies in our world, unexplained appearances of individuals with unusual abilities or artifacts with properties inconsistent with our physical laws. And third," Naruto prompted, recognizing the academic rhythm of presenting findings in sequence. "Third," Sophia continued with barely contained excitement, "I found references in obscure Proto-Olympian texts to beings called eye-bearers, individuals who could perceive and traverse the boundaries between realms. They're described as neither mortal nor divine but something else entirely, what the texts call divine bridges." She produced an ancient scroll, handling it with reverent care as she unrolled it enough to display a faded illustration. The image showed a humanoid figure with stylized eyes containing geometric patterns that, even allowing for artistic interpretation, bore striking resemblance to Naruto's evolved Sharingan. "This dates to approximately 8000 BCE, Sophia explained. Predating the Olympian Pantheon's ascension. It describes eye-bearers as crucial to maintaining dimensional stability during periods of cosmic alignment, when barriers between worlds grew thin." Naruto studied the illustration, his enhanced vision detecting details invisible to normal sight, subtle energy patterns embedded in the pigments themselves, as if the ancient artist had incorporated actual dimensional energy into the creation of the image. "You think I'm one of these eye-bearers?" he asked, the concept simultaneously foreign and strangely resonant. "I think," Sophia replied with careful precision, "that your Sharingan and these historical eye-bearers share common origins. Whether that connection is coincidental or causative remains undetermined, but the status Cal probability of random correlation is virtually zero." She paused, sipping her coffee while studying him over the rim with analytical intensity. "There's something else you should know. According to these texts, eye-bearers weren't just passive observers of dimensional boundaries, they actively maintained them, preventing catastrophic bleed-through between realms. The implication hung between them as the rising sun painted the beach in gold and amber hues. If Naruto's evolved Sharingan connected him to these ancient eye-bearers, his presence in this dimension might be neither accident nor coincidence but necessity, a response to growing instability between worlds." "Great," he muttered, "another world-saving responsibility. Just what I needed." Sophia's expression softened slightly, scientific detachment giving way to something more human. "If it helps, the texts also mention eye-bearers working in pairs, one from each connected realm. You may not be the only one carrying this burden." Before Naruto could respond, a distant shout drew their attention. Thalia jogged toward them across the sand, her silver hunter's jacket gleaming in the morning light. Despite evident fatigue in the shadows beneath her eyes, she moved with characteristic purpose and energy. "There you are," she called. "Chiron's called an emergency council. We just received a message from the gods. They've detected dimensional energy building at multiple sites across the country. And," she hesitated, eyes fixed on Naruto with an unreadable expression, "there's something else, something impossible." "What?" Naruto and Sophia asked simultaneously. "A message," Thalia said, her voice carefully neutral. "From Konoha." somehow transmitted through the dimensional barrier directly to Hermes' communication system. Naruto's heart lurched painfully against his ribs. What did it say? That's just it, Thalia replied. It wasn't text or audio. It was chakra, specifically encoded to your unique signature. Hermes says only you can decode it. Quote, the message manifested as a small scroll sealed with familiar symbols, the spiral emblem of Uzushiogakure combined with Konoha's leaf insignia, a personal mark. Naruto immediately recognized as Tsunade's modified Hokage seal. The parchment radiated chakra that resonated with his own, activated by his touch as he channeled specific energy patterns to break the security measures. The scroll unfurled to reveal text in shinobi cipher, but as Naruto read, the characters shifted and rearranged themselves into a three-dimensional chakra construct that rose F. Rom the parchment, a miniature hologram of Tsunade herself, rendered in blue-white energy. Naruto, the chakra projection spoke, her voice distorted but recognizable. If you're receiving this, RE, experimental dimensional communication jutsu succeeded. We detected your chakra signature across the dimensional barrier approximately 72 hours ago, confirming you survived the transition. He gathered demigods and Chiron watched in fascinated silence as the chakra construct continued, Tsunade's miniature form gesturing with characteristic authority despite her incorporeal state. Your shadow clone delivered fragmentary information about your situation, but communication collapsed before complete intelligence transfer. What we do know is concerning. You've crossed into another dimension with different metaphysical laws. And your Sharingan has undergone unprecedented evolution. The projection flickered momentarily before stabilizing. More pressing. Since your departure, we've experienced increasingly severe dimensional anomalies throughout the elemental nations. Unknown entities have manifested in multiple locations, targeting individuals with Kekkei Genkai, specifically visual bloodline limits. 3 Hyuga clan members and 1 surviving Uchiha have been attacked, their dujutsu apparently extracted by force. Naruto's hands clenched involuntarily, knuckles widening at the implications. Someone was harvesting bloodline eyes, and not just in this dimension. We've established a joint response team under Kakashi's leadership, Tsunade continued. But without understanding what we're facing, our countermeasures remain rudimentary at best. If you've gained intelligence about these interdimensional threats, we need that information immediately. The projection paused, Tsunade's expression shifting to something more personal. On an individual note, you've been officially listed as on special assignment, rather than missing nin. Your position and rights within Konoha remain intact, regardless of dimensional location. A ghost of a smile crossed her chakra-rendered features. In other words, don't worry about your apartment or ramen tab. I've placed them under Hokage protection until your return. The message concluded with technical instructions for return communication and security protocols to prevent interception. As the chakra construct dissipated, the scroll itself dissolved into energy that merged with Naruto's own chakra network, the information integrating directly into his consciousness. For several moments, silence reigned in the big house. Conference room as everyone processed the implications of this unprecedented communication. Well, Percy finally said, at least we know it's not just our dimension being targeted. Small comfort, Annabeth countered. This confirms coordinated attacks across multiple realities. Someone or something is systematically harvesting visual bloodline powers from both worlds. Chiron's expression had grown increasingly grave as the message played out. The extraction of these visual abilities, is it fatal to the victims? Naruto nodded grimly. The dujutsu are physically integrated with the optic system. Extraction without specialized medical ninjutsu is invariably lethal. He paused, processing the technical details embedded in Tsunade's message. According to preliminary autopsy findings, the extraction method used on the victims shows unfamiliar energy signatures, not chakra-based techniques. Consistent with what we observed in the dimensional hunter that targeted you, Sophia noted. Already inputting data into her tablet. Different manifestation, same fundamental approach, acquisition of visual bloodline abilities through force. But why? Thalia pressed, frustration evident in her tense posture. What makes these visual abilities so valuable that something would risk interdimensional conflict to acquire them? Power. Naruto answered simply. In my world, the most Advanced Sharingan techniques can manipulate reality itself, control time perception, generate inextinguishable black flames, even create pocket dimensions. If someone discovered the connection between these abilities and your world's primordial dimensional powers, they could be trying to combine them, Sophia concluded, her expression darkening with comprehension. Create a hybrid power system, incorporating both chakra-based reality manipulation and primordial dimensional control, which would make them virtually unstoppable across multiple realities, Annabeth added grimly. Chiron cleared his throat, drawing their attention. There's another possibility we must consider. These systematic attacks began after Naruto's arrival and the evolution of his Sharingan. What if these aren't random harvesting operations, but targeted acquisitions to replicate what occurred naturally in him? The implication hung heavy in the air, someone trying to artificially create more beings like Naruto. Dimensional bridges with hybrid power systems capable of traversing and potentially controlling reality barriers. We need to establish secure communication with Konoha, Naruto decided, focusing on immediate practicalities rather than the overwhelming strategic implications. Coordinate intelligence and response efforts across dimensions. I can help with that, Sophia offered immediately. The chakra-based communication system your Hokage used provides an excellent template. With Hermes' communications network as infrastructure, we could establish reliable interdimensional contact. As the discussion progressed to technical details of cross-dimensional communication protocols, Naruto found his attention divided between strategic planning and personal concern for his friends in Konoha. The attacks on Hyuga clan members suggested the enemy already possessed significant intelligence about shinobi bloodlines, knowledge that could only have come from someone familiar with the ninja world. There's a traitor, he realized aloud, interrupting the ongoing conversation. Someone from my world is working with whatever's coordinating these attacks. No outside entity would have data. I led knowledge of Kekkei Genkai locations and vulnerabilities. The room fell silent as this new complication registered. Finally, Thalia voiced what everyone was thinking. So we're facing an enemy with knowledge of both worlds. Technology capable of breaching dimensional barriers, and now potentially access to multiple visual bloodline powers. Anything else we should add to this catastrophe? Yes, actually, Sophia replied, displaying a new set of calculations on her tablet. Based on dimensional energy fluctuations and astronomical alignments, we have approximately 12 days before the barriers between our worlds reach minimum stability. At that point, large-scale dimensional collapse becomes a statistical probability. Percy groaned. 12 days to prevent multidimensional catastrophe. Why do we always get the impossible deadlines? Look on the bright side, Naruto suggested with forced optimism. At least we know what we're up against. Do we? Thalia challenged. Elector. I see blue eyes flashing with barely contained frustration. We still don't know who's behind this, what their ultimate objective is, or how to stop them. All we have are theories and 12 days until probable dimensional collapse. She wasn't wrong. Despite the information from Konoha, they remained fundamentally reactive, responding to enemy movements without understanding the larger strategy. In shinobi terms, they were fighting blind against an opponent with superior intelligence and initiative. Then we change the dynamic, Naruto decided, drawing on tactical lessons from countless missions and battles. Stop reacting and start acting. Force them to respond to us. How? Annabeth asked, gray eyes sharp with strategic interest. We set a trap, he explained, the plan forming as he spoke. Using me and these eyes as bait. If they want the Sharingan so badly, let's give them an opportunity to come after it, on our terms, in a location we control, with preparations in place. That's insanely dangerous, Thalia objected immediately, concern breaking through her usually guarded demeanor. You'd be placing yourself directly in the enemy's crosshairs. I already am, Naruto countered. The difference is whether I'm waiting for the next attack or controlling when and where it happens. He turned to Sophia. Can you predict where dimensional barriers will be thinnest during the next 72 hours? The daughter of Athena nodded slowly, comprehension dawning in her eyes. Theoretically, yes. By correlating astronomical positions with historical thinning patterns, I could identify probable weak points with reasonable accuracy. Good, Naruto continued. We select a location with strategic advantages for us, then I deliberately activate these eyes at full power, Kree. Ting an energy signature they can't ignore. When they come through, we're waiting with everything we've got. Chiron stroked his beard thoughtfully. A bold strategy with significant risks, but potent. Chiali our best option given the circumstances. I'll consult with Olympus. This plan would benefit from divine support. I'll coordinate with Konoha, Naruto added. If we time it correctly, they can prepare a simultaneous operation on their side, targeting whoever's providing information to the dimensional harvesters. As the planning session intensified, tactical details debated and refined by the assembled group. Naruto felt a familiar rush of pre-mission focus, the clarity that came with commitment to decisive action rather than defensive reaction. Whatever entity sought his eyes and Threy, Auden both dimensions would soon discover that hunting a shinobi of the hidden leaf meant becoming prey yourself. Preparation for Operation Dimensional Snare, Percy's suggested name, which had innately stuck, consumed the next 36 hours. Camp Half-Blood mobilized with military efficiency, demigods drawing on hard-won experience from the Titan and Giant Wars. Naruto established regular communication with Konoha through Sophia's modified interdimensional jutsu, coordinating strategy with Kakashi and Shikamaru while sharing intelligence on the dimensional hunter's capabilities and weaknesses. Throughout the intense preparations, Naruto found unexpected synergy with Sophia's analytical approach. Her mathematical models of dimensional energy patterns complemented his practical experience with chakra manipulation, allowing them to develop hybrid techniques that bridged both worlds' power systems. Together they created specialized seals that could destabilize the dimensional hunt. Exotic matter composition, essentially unraveling their physical forms by disrupting the interdimensional binding forces that held them together. The fundamental principle is quantum entanglement across dimensional boundaries. Sophia explained during one late-night development session, her usually precise diction growing more animated as she diagrammed complex equations. These entities NTAIN coherence in our dimension through constant energy exchange with their origin point. Disrupt that exchange, and they lose structural integrity, Naruto finished, incorporating her theoretic framework into modified versions of Uzumaki sealing techniques. Like cutting chakra flow to a shadow clone. Sophia's eyes lit with intellectual excitement. Exactly. You understand the concept perfectly. It's fascinating how your chakra theory provides practical applications for quantum field mechanics that our physicists haven't even theorized yet. Their collaborative work proceeded through the night. Sophia's theoretical brilliance combining with Naruto's intuitive understanding of energy manipulation to create tools specifically designed to counter interdimensional threats. By morning, they had produced 6 specialized sealing tags that could theoretically collapse a dimensional hunter's physical form instantly. Untested prototypes, Sophia cautioned as she handed the completed tags to Naruto. But the mathematics supports their effectiveness. Sometimes you have to trust the theory when there's no time for field testing, he replied, carefully storing the tags in his equipment pouch. In Konoha, we call it battlefield innovation. Developing techniques under fire when standard approaches fail. Sophia's analytical expression softened momentarily. Your world sounds fascinating. The integration of mystical energy manipulation with practical combat applications represents a completely different evolutionary path for human potential. Your world has its own wonders, Naruto countered, gesturing toward the tablet where complex multidimensional equations scrolled continuously. Technology that performs functions we'd consider impossible without chakra, mathematics that map reality itself. Their intellectual exchange might have continued indefinitely had Thalia not interrupted, entering the workroom with characteristic directness. If you two theory nerds are finished bonding over equations, we've got a final briefing in 10 minutes. Sophia, Annabeth needs your dimensional mapping to finalize deployment positions. As Sophia gathered her materials and departed, Thalia lingered, studying Naruto with an intensity that suggested unspoken concerns. The daughter of Zeus had been unusually quiet during strategic planning, contributing tactical suggestions while maintaining emotional distance from the operation's central risk, using Naruto as bait for dimensional predators. You don't like the plan, he observed once they were alone. The plan is solid, she replied immediately. Tactically sound. Best use of available resources, acceptable risk-reward ratio. Her clinical assessment sounded rehearsed, at odds with the tension evident in her posture. But, Naruto prompted gently. Thalia's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly, frustration flashing in her electric blue eyes. But it puts you at unnecessary risk when we've barely begun to understand what these eyes of yours really are or why they're so important. We're walking into this half-blind, operating on theories and educated guesses. Her concern surprised him, not its existence, but its intensity. Despite their relatively brief acquaintance, Thalia had become fiercely protective, her usual tough exterior occasionally revealing glimpses of deeper attachment. In my experience, Naruto said quietly, the most important missions always involve incomplete information and calculated risks. If we wait for perfect intelligence, we'll still be planning while the dimensions collapse around us. I know that, she acknowledged, running a hand through her spiky black hair in a gesture of frustrated acceptance. Believe me, I understand necessary sacrifices better than most. It's just, she paused, searching for words that wouldn't compromise her carefully maintained emotional boundaries. You're worried, Naruto supplied, understanding her reluctance to voice vulnerability. We all are, she deflected, though her eyes betrayed the personal nature of her concern. You've become important to camp. To the mission. The unspoken to me hung in the air between them, neither quite ready to acknowledge the connection that had formed with surprising speed and intensity since his arrival in this dimension. I'll be careful, he promised simply. And I'll have you watching my back, which significantly improves the odds in any fight. Her mouth quirked in a reluctant half-smile at the compliment. Damn right it does. Just remember, if those dimensional creeps want your eyes, they'll have to go through me first. And I'm not exactly known for being accommodating. The moment of connection lingered between them, unspoken understanding that transcended their different origins and experiences. For all their superficial differences, they shared fundamental similarities. Both vessels of extraordinary power they hadn't asked for, both shaped by isolation and struggle. Both determined to protect others at any cost to themselves. We should join the others, Thalia finally said, breaking the charged silence. Chiron's bringing updates from Olympus that will affect deployment strategies. As they walked toward the big house, Naruto found himself acutely aware of her presence beside him, the controlled power in her movements, the faint ozone scent that accompanied her lightning affinity. The way other campers unconsciously gave her space out of respect rather than fear. In many ways, she reminded him of the strongest kunoichi he'd known, Tsunade's determination. Sakura's fierce loyalty, Temari's strategic mind, yet with qualities entirely her own. The final briefing assembled all key personnel, cabin counselors, senior strategists, divine representatives, and the core team that would execute the dimensional trap. Chiron presided with grave authority, his immortal eyes reflecting the weight of countless wars and crises witnessed throughout the millennia. Olympus has granted limited intervention authority, the centaur announced once everyone had settled. Zeus has authorized Artemis to deploy her hunters as perimeter security. Apollo will provide aerial reconnaissance. Hermes has established emergency extraction protocols should the operation require rapid evacuation. What about offensive support? Clarice Leroux, daughter of Ares, demanded. If we're facing interdimensional entities powerful enough to extract bloodline abilities, we need divine firepower. The ancient laws restrict direct divine combat intervention, Chiron reminded her. However, Zeus has authorized Thalia to access greater portions of her inherited powers during this operation. As his daughter, she can channel aspects of his domain without violating non-interference protocols. All eyes turned to Thalia, who maintained a carefully neutral expression despite the significance of this concession. Divine parents rarely granted their demigod children access to expanded power reserves. Fearing both the physical toll and potential for independent action against Olympian interests. Additionally, Chiron continued, Athena has temporarily assigned Sophia expanded access to certain restricted knowledge concerning primordial dimensional mechanics. This information is classified beyond normal demigod clearance but deemed necessary given the current threat assessment. Sophia nodded acknowledgement, her expression simultaneously excited by the access to forbidden knowledge and sobered by its implications. From Konoha, Naruto reported next. Kakashi has deployed Anbu units to monitor suspected information leaks and potential dimensional weak points. Shikamaru has developed a parallel operation to identify whoever's providing intelligence to the dimensional hunters. Their strategy mirrors ours, controlled information released to flush out collaborators. The briefing proceeded through detailed deployment plans, contingency protocols, and communication systems designed to maintain coordination across both conventional and dimensional battle spaces. Annabeth's strategic brilliance shone as she outlined overlapping defensive formati, ons optimized for different manifestation scenarios. The trap location has been selected, she explained, displaying topographical maps of a remote area in the Adirondack Mountains. Low population density, minimal mortal infrastructure, natural features providing tactical advantages, and, most importantly, a projected dimensional thin point occurring at precisely 0200 hours tomorrow morning. According to my calculations, Sophia added, the astronomical alignment during that time window will create a 73% probability of successful dimensional transmission with minimal energy expenditure. In practical terms, it's when our mysterious hunters can most easily break through to our reality. And we'll be waiting, Percy concluded with grim satisfaction, riptide gleaming F.A. intly as he absently twisted its pen form between his fingers. The meeting concluded with final equipment checks and assignment confirmations. As the group dispersed to complete last-minute preparations, Naruto found himself momentarily overwhelmed by the scope of what they faced, not just personal danger but potential catastrophe spanning multiple dimensions. Having second thoughts? Asked a quiet voice beside him. Annabeth had lingered, her gray eyes sharp with characteristic perception. Not about the mission, Naruto clarified. Just processing the scale. In Konoha, I've faced village-level threats, even global dangers. But multiple dimensions, primordial forces. He shook his head. It expands the definition of responsibility. Annabeth's expression softened with understanding. Percy says the same thing sometimes. One day you're worried about passing math tests, the next you're preventing the end of Western civilization. She offered a wry smile. The weight never really gets lighter. But you get stronger at carrying it. And it helps to remember you're not carrying it alone. Her words resonated with lessons Naruto had learned throughout his life, the importance of bonds, of shared burdens. Of fighting not just for abstract ideals but for specific people whose lives and futures mattered personally. As camp activity surged around them, armory details distributing celestial bronze weapons. Apollo campers preparing specialized medical kits, Hephaestus cabin members calibrating detection equipment, Naruto found himself drawing strength from this community's determined response. Different from Konoha in form but identical in essence, people uniting against threats that exceeded individual capability, courage magnified through collective action. Night descended on the Adirondack Mountains, stars emerging with preternatural brightness as if the thinning dimensional barriers enhanced their visibility. The operation team had deployed hours earlier, establishing GA perimeter around the calculated breach point, a natural clearing surrounded by ancient pines whose towering forms provided both concealment and elevated observation positions. Naruto knelt at the clearing's center, focusing his chakra as he prepared the specialized seals that would amplify his Sharingan's energy signature across dimensional boundaries, essentially creating a beacon visible to whatever entities hunted for his eyes. Around him, concentric rings of protection had been established, Sophia and Annabeth monitoring dimensional energy patterns from a camouflaged command post, Percy, Clarice, and selected combat specialists positioned at tactical intervals, Artemis's hunters maintaining wider perimeter security under their lieutenant's command. Thalia had insisted on taking the closest protective position to Naruto himself, a decision supported by both tactical logic, her lightning abilities complemented his wind chakra, and unspoken personal determination to serve as his immediate defense. She crouched among shadows 20 meters away, her spear humming faintly with controlled electrical charge, eyes scanning continuously for threats. Final communications check, Cam. Annabeth's voice through the enchanted earpieces they all wore. Sound off by position. Each team member confirmed operational status, their voices reflecting the tense anticipation of imminent engagement. When all positions reported ready, Sophia's voice came through with scientific precision. Dimensional thinning accelerating. Energy patterns indicate 63 minutes to optimal breach conditions. Naruto, you should begin preliminary activation to establish the energy signature gradient. Understood, he confirmed, adjusting his position to optimal meditative stance. Beginning primary sequence now. Centering his breathing, Naruto initiated the specialized chakra flow patterns developed through collaboration with both Konoha's seal masters and Sophia's dimensional theories. Unlike normal jutsu activation, this technique required precise modulation, creating an energy signature strong enough to attract interdimensional attention while maintaining sufficient reserves for the combat that would inevitably follow. The forest around him grew unnaturally still as his chakra expanded outward in controlled waves. Night creatures fell silent, sensing the alien power radiating from the clearing's center. Even the air seemed to pause, molecules slowing their eternal dance as reality itself responded to his chakra's influence on dimensional boundaries. Through his earpiece, Naruto could hear Sophia's excited commentary as instruments detected his energy patterns' effect on local dimensional stability, extraordinary correlation between chakra modulation and quantum field response. The dimensional membrane is actually harmonizing with his energy signature rather than resisting it, almost like recognition. Less science, more tactical updates, Thalia cut in, her voice tight with focused tension. Are we drawing attention yet? Affirmative, came the immediate response. Energy patterns consistent with observation responses detected across at least 3-dimensional vectors. We've definitely got something's attention. Naruto increased his chakra output incrementally, channeling more energy to his eyes. The transformation occurred with practiced control, the world sharpening into hyper-real focus as his irises shifted to indigo with golden geometric patterns. Through this enhanced vision, he could perceive the dimensional fabric itself, gossamer thin bari. Separating realities that normally existed without awareness of each other. And within those barriers, movement, shapes sliding between dimensions, drawn toward his position like predators sensing wounded prey. Multiple signatures approaching, he reported calmly, years of combat experience maintaining his composure despite the alien nature of the threat. At least 3 distinct entities, larger than the previous hunter. There, testing the dimensional boundary, looking for optimal breach points. Confirmed, Sophia's voice replied, professional excitement bleeding through her scientific detachment. Dimensional pressure increasing at multiple vectors. Breach imminent within 12 minutes. The warning transmitted to all team members, triggering final position adjustments and weapon readiness checks. In the tense silence that followed, Naruto could sense Thalia's focused attention from her concealed position, her concern palpable despite their physical separation. Stay sharp, Whiskers. Her voice came softly through the communication system, using the nickname that had somehow evolved from casual teasing to personal connection. Remember the plan. Draw them in, identify the primary target, deploy the seals. Don't try to be a hero. Says the lightning-throwing daughter of Zeus, he replied with equal softness, the gentle banter calming pre-battle tension for them both. Different situation, she countered. I was born into this mess. You volunteered. Technically, I fell through a dimensional rift. Not exactly volunteering. You know what I mean. Her voice grew serious. You could have stayed at camp, protected behind divine barriers, while we handled this. Instead, you're sitting in a forest clearing with a metaphysical target painted on your eyes. The observation carried unspoken meaning, recognition of his willingness to risk himself rather than delegate danger to others, a quality she clearly respected despite its accompanying frustration for those concerned about his safety. Dimensional breach forming, Sophia's urgent announcement interrupted their exchange. 30 seconds to materialization. All units confirm combat readiness. The atmosphere in the clearing changed perceptibly, air pressure dropping as molecular level energy transferred to the forming dimensional gateway. Temperature plummeted, frost crystallizing on grass and leaves despite the summer season. Reality itself seemed to thin, background details blurring as dimensional focus concentrated on the impending breach point. Through his enhanced vision, Naruto watched the dimensional barrier stretch and distort, not tearing violently as with previous incursions but opening with deliberate precision, edges folding back like elaborate origami to create a perfectly symmetrical portal. The technique displayed vastly greater control than earlier manifestations, suggesting either different entities or significant evolution in capability. That's not like the previous breaches, he warned through the communication system. This is controlled, precise. Whatever's coming through has mastered dimensional transition. The portal stabilized at approximately 4 meters diameter. its edges glowing with energy that registered to Naruto's enhanced vision as neither chakra nor divine power but something more fundamental, reality itself manipulated at its constituent level. Through the opening, he glimpsed a realm of geometric impossibility, spaces folding into themselves, structures existing in more dimensions than human perception could process, colors beyond normal visual spectrum. And emerging from this impossible realm, three figures that defied conventional description. Unlike the amorphous, multi-eyed hunter from the previous incursion, these entities possessed humanoid structure but with proportions and features that created immediate cognitive dissonance. Their limbs connected to torsos at mathematically perfect angles, skin shifting through metallic hues that reflected light from dimensions beyond normal perception. Their faces featured no recognizable features except for eyes, not dozens scattered randomly as with the previous hunter, but precisely three, arranged in triangular formation on otherwise smooth facial planes. Most disturbing was their coordinated movement, perfect synchronization suggesting either shared consciousness or rehearsed precision beyond human capability. They emerged simultaneously, equidistant from each other, creating a triangular formation that Naruto immediately recognized as a standard containment pattern. "They're hunting in formation," he reported, remaining motionless despite every combat instinct urging immediate response. The plan required allowing their approach to identify the leader and their capabilities before engaging. Triangular containment pattern, suggesting capture rather than elimination as primary objective. "Confirmed," came Annabeth's tense reply. "Maintain position until they reveal primary target designator. Perimeter units hold unless directly engaged." The entities advanced with unnatural fluidity, their movements suggesting bodies unconstrained by conventional physics. They maintained perfect triangular formation centered on Naruto, closing distance with methodical purpose rather than predatory aggression. When they reached approximately 10 meters from his position, they halted simultaneously. For several heartbeats, silence reigned as they observed him with unblinking triocular focus. Then, in perfect synchronization, they spoke, not with sound but directly into his consciousness. "Bridge bearer, eye holder, dimension walker, you have been located." The psychic communication bypassed conventional language, conveying concepts rather than words. Naruto's mind translated these concepts into terms he could comprehend. "Who are you?" he asked aloud, maintaining the appearance of isolated vulnerability while acutely aware of his concealed allies surrounding the clearing. "Why are you hunting those with visual bloodline limits?" The entities remained motionless, their metallic skin rippling in patterns that seemed to communicate among them without words. Finally, the central figure, distinguished only by slightly more golden hue than its silver companions, responded. "We are collectors, preservers. The dimensional collapse approaches. Eyes must be gathered and synthesized to maintain continuity." "Dimensional collapse," Naruto pressed, seeking information while surreptitiously adjusting his position to access his sealed tags. "What collapse?" "Cycle end approaches. Barriers thin beyond recovery. Without intervention, dimensional integrity fails. Without the eyes, intervention impossible." The communication carried genuine urgency beneath its alien delivery, not malevolence but desperate purpose. These weren't merely hunters but entities with mission-driven imperative, convinced of existential necessity. They believe they're preventing catastrophe. Naruto realized, transmitting this insight to his team. They're harvesting visual bloodlines because they think they need them to prevent dimensional collapse. Classic ends justify means rationalization. Annabeth's voice replied in his earpiece. But notice they're not denying killing to acquire these abilities. Individual survival subordinate to dimensional continuity. The entities communicated, apparently perceiving Annabeth's objection despite its private transmission. "Your comprehension limitations prevent proper evaluation of existential mathematics. Did they just call us stupid?" Percy's incredulous voice came through the communication system. "Accurate assessment," the entities confirmed, revealing their ability to monitor all local communications. "Your species perceives 4 dimensions. Collapse occurs across 11, incomprehensible to limited consciousness." During this exchange, Naruto had been gradually channeling chakra to his specialized sealing tags, preparing them for deployment while maintaining the appearance of isolated contemplation. His enhanced vision detected subtle energy fluctuations among the entities. Ikation patterns indicating strategy adjustment as they analyzed the situation. What exactly do you need from these eyes? He asked, continuing the dialogue while completing preparations. What makes visual bloodlines crucial to preventing this collapse? The central entity's metallic skin rippled with what might have been equivalent to frustration. Visual bloodlines contain dimensional interface capability. Perception across reality barriers. Combined properly, they create stabilization matrix for collapsing dimensional boundaries. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.